Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Kane, both before and during your confirmation hearing, we discussed your commitment to duty and to adhering to the Constitution as well as your oath of office. And I certainly appreciated your reassurance that you will remain, quote, a nonpartisan leader through and through, unquote. With one of your top priorities being maintaining the independence of the U.S. military. Along with remaining apolitical, I'm sure you will agree that fostering a stable, mission-focused environment is essential to leading the Department of Defense. So my question for you, sir, is can you please share with this committee and the American people what your approach to leadership as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is?
General Kine's pledge to remain a nonpartisan leader stands out as one of the most important commitments made during the hearing, and it carries deep significance for the role he is stepping into. In a time when politics often seeps into every corner of public life, his emphasis on remaining impartial and loyal only to the Constitution sets a clear boundary between political interests and military duty. His words reflected not just a promise, but an understanding of the immense responsibility tied to the position of Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He made it clear that his leadership style would be rooted in servant leadership, a philosophy that puts the mission and the people first. Rather than leading through power or fear, Kine highlighted that he intends to lead by service, which resonates strongly with the traditions of the U.S. military and its core values of duty, honor, and country.
Yes, sir. It's certainly the job is one to understand the global set of challenges, integrate the options that must be considered, and then to present those options to the president. And I've always taken a servant leadership approach throughout my career, based on my oath of office and the Constitution and my commission.
And as a nonpartisan leader, you reiterate that?
Always. Yeah, I reiterate that.
Well, thank you. And as a former lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy Reserve, I certainly agree with that and agree with your answers and your commitment to the men and women in uniform. Secretary Hegseth, your approach to leadership, I believe, stands in direct conflict with the ideas that we just discussed with General Kane. And at a time of great chaos and uncertainty in the world, I'm extremely concerned that your many shortcomings could have potentially life-threatening consequences for American service members. In your confirmation hearing, I expressed my deep reservations about your qualifications to run the DoD. I also made it clear that no board of directors in the world would hire someone with so little experience to run a large business, much less the Department of Defense, where American lives are on the line regularly. For this reason, in addition to some concerns we had about character, I ultimately opposed your nomination. And unfortunately, my reservations have become reality.
The first and perhaps most serious charge was the dismissal of capable, uniformed leaders without cause. Removing experienced leaders destabilizes the chain of command and erodes trust within the ranks. The military thrives on discipline, order, and confidence in leadership, so firing people arbitrarily creates an atmosphere of uncertainty and fear. Peters suggested that this had created a leadership vacuum, leaving the department without the steady hands needed to navigate complex challenges. Beyond that, Hex was accused of imposing loyalty tests, a practice that corrodes the integrity of any institution, especially one like the Pentagon, where impartial advice and competence must outweigh personal allegiance. The combination of forced resignations, firings, and the loss of 5 senior advisors due to these practices raised concerns about whether the department was being run with professionalism or through intimidation and personal agendas.
I know my colleagues have touched on some of these issues, but to briefly summarize, you have failed to set the example, or lead from the front, as you like to say. And this includes prompting a leadership and oversight vacuum at the department by firing qualified uniformed leaders without cause, creating loyalty tests and leak investigations that have led to 5 of your senior advisors resigning or being fired, sharing classified military details on an unsecure app during operations in Yemen that included unauthorized individuals on at least 2 separate occasions, and revoking the DoD personal protection detail for both Secretary of Defense Mark Esper and the former chairman of Joint Chiefs Mark Milley, putting their safety at risk while they are still under threat from Iran. We have seen time and time again how your conduct, lack of personal responsibility, are harming readiness, reputation, and professionalism of our military. At a time where Israel and Iran are in open conflict and our adversaries in Russia and China will exploit any weaknesses, unfortunately, my worst fears about your leadership shortfalls, unfortunately, have been realized. Secretary Hegseth, I firmly believe that accountability from leadership is vital in all sectors, not just in the military. And demonstrating to your subordinates that everyone plays by the same rules helps to build trust and open communications within your team.
The issue of accountability stood at the heart of the hearing, and it was perhaps the most powerful theme running through the senator's line of questioning. Senator Peters emphasized that accountability is not just a concept, but a standard that must apply equally across all levels of the military, from the newest recruit to the highest-ranking officials. He reminded Secretary Hegseth of his own words during the confirmation process, when Hegseth had boldly declared that if a rifleman loses his rifle, they throw the book at him. That statement was meant to highlight how strict accountability is in the armed forces. A soldier who makes a mistake faces consequences, not only because it affects their performance, but because it could endanger others on the battlefield. Peters contrasted that principle with what he described as Hegseth's failure to take responsibility for his own actions, and the contradiction was striking. Accountability in the military has always been seen as the foundation of discipline and trust. When junior members see their leaders punished or excused differently than they themselves would be, it erodes faith in the fairness of the system. Peters pushed this point hard, noting that leadership is not just about giving orders, but about setting the example. A leader who refuses to hold themselves to the same standards as their subordinates undermines the very fabric of military cohesion. He made clear that accountability is not symbolic. It builds trust, ensures open communication, and maintains morale. Without it, even the most skilled force can falter. The senator also tied accountability to current events, pointing out that the Department of Defense Inspector General had launched an investigation into Hegseth's use of the unsecured messaging app Signal during operations in Yemen. This investigation was not a matter of speculation or rumor, but a direct response to concerns raised by members of the committee. Peters' question was straightforward. If the Inspector General finds that you improperly disclosed classified information, how will you demonstrate accountability to the men and women of the military? It was a chance for Hegseth to show leadership, to make clear that he was willing to be held to the same high standards he had once demanded of others, but the response was evasive. Hegseth dismissed the scenario as hypothetical, avoiding a direct commitment to take responsibility. For Peters and for many listening, this answer rang hollow. In the military, accountability cannot be treated as theoretical. It must be immediate and real. Service members are trained to take ownership of their mistakes, to correct them, and to accept the consequences. A refusal to do so from the very top raises doubts about whether accountability truly exists at the highest levels of leadership.
And those two things are extremely important. And I know that you share my desire to ensure that we're holding our senior leaders accountable for actions. And during your nomination hearing, you stated, quote, accountability is coming because everybody in this room knows if you are a rifleman and you lose your rifle, they are throwing the book at you, end of quote. You also said that leadership has been unwilling to take accountability, and I couldn't agree more on how important accountability is. As we all know, at the request of this committee, the Department of Defense Inspector General launched an investigation into your use of Signal, an unclassified commercially available messaging application to discuss information pertaining military actions in Yemen. So given your focus on accountability, how will you demonstrate this accountability to the men and women in the U.S. military if the Inspector General finds that you improperly disclosed information?
That assessment is pending at this time. That is a hypothetical question, but the gentleman's time has expired.
I think your answer is clear. You are not going to be held accountable.
Thank you very much, Senator Peters.